Hi, and welcome to the tutorial on how to set up the QuickScripts spawner. In this tutorial, we'll set up a spawner that can instantiate a couple of different objects, and I'll walk you through all the different systems that are in place and how to use them. So to start with, the best way to set up a spawner is to go to Game Object, QuickScripts, and then click Quick Spawner. This puts a game object into your scene. Now, this is not a physical object as such. This has a quick spawner on it, but what this means is this is essentially the brains that's looking after the spawning process, and this itself is not anything that will appear in your game. The first step to do is to click on Create Spawn Point. Now we have the very first position at which our objects will spawn to. What I'm also going to just quickly do is make a plane, because I need something for the objects to spawn on. I've just put a dark grey material onto that. These materials were set up before. Okay, back to the spawner. So we'll work through the list of variables here. First one, spawner ID, will be the name of the spawner and a series of numbers. You don't need to worry about changing this. This is in there so that the system can automatically, in the background, link the spawn points to the spawner. If you do need to change it for whatever reason, just make sure that the spawn points also have the same ID. The spawn points are kept underneath the quick spawners transform, so you shouldn't ever need to scale this, but don't anyway, because it will do some weird stuff. It'll stretch things around, and yeah, just don't do that. But it means that, well, if you really need to, you can move all of your spawners together in one go. Ultimately, though, the reason they're kept underneath the spawner is to make this nice and easy to look after. So, our next boolean, this tick box for is active, means that the spawner is currently doing its thing. The reason this is included is so that if you need to, you can access this through other scripts, because it is a public variable, so that you can stop the spawner from spawning altogether. And then you can set it to active again, and it will continue spawning. Random spawn point is, you would only tick this if you have more than one spawn point. Otherwise you can, well, you'll see in a bit when we get around to it, you can tell the spawn to spawn to all of its spawn points, or it can choose a random one per time that it spawns. Auto respawn means that it will continue to respawn to the spawn points. So how this works is every time this amount of time lapses, this is seconds, so every 5 seconds, you can change this if you want to, seconds between spawn waves. Every time 5 seconds passes, the spawner sends a message to all of its spawn points to say, spawn this object now. Only if those spawn points are free. And what I mean by if the spawn points are free is that if the object that spawn point last spawned has moved away from the spawn point or has been removed from the scene, after this amount of time, spawn request cooldown, after that time has lapsed, the spawn point is now considered to be available. And then the spawner, every 5 seconds, will send out messages to its spawn points saying, alright, which of you are available to spawn an item? And then it goes from there. So if the spawn points always have their most recently spawned item still inside them, they won't ever spawn another one there until it's free. That's to stop items from spawning inside each other, basically. When I say item, I mean game object. You can tell the spawner to spawn any kind of game object. You can duplicate them from the hierarchy, or it can duplicate them from your project file. So in case you have, this isn't the best example. I don't have any prefabs set here, but if you have a prefab, you can tell it to spawn in that prefab. The quick spawner does work by instantiation, so if you're planning to work on platforms that have a lower processing power, you might need to take that into consideration. Currently there's no system in place for pooling objects, but there's something that we're looking into. So back here, now you've got start spawned as well, which means that you can just instantly spawn to your spawn points at the start of the game before this timer even lapses. Okay, so down here you have the objects to spawn. We're going to spawn in a cube with a rigid body. Now, right now we don't have that cube available to us, so we're just going to make it. I'm going to right click in my hierarchy, 3D object, cube. Cool. And we'll add a rigid body to this so that we can see the physics on that in the game. And we're going to come back to the spawner, come down here to objects to spawn, and increase this to 1 just for now. We can have it above 1. If you have more than 1, as it says here, if you have more than 1 object in the objects to spawn list, it will choose that object randomly. So we'll drag in that to there. Cool. And spawn points that's all set up for you automatically. You don't need to worry about that. So when we hit start, it should immediately spawn one of these cubes because start spawned is ticked. Alright, there we go. And if I was to untick that, it would take 5 seconds. I'll reduce that for the purpose of demonstration to 3 seconds, and then it will spawn. 1, 2, 3. So, what if you have multiple spawn points? We'll set up multiple spawn points now. You can also duplicate spawn points if you want to set some up really quickly by selecting it either in the hierarchy or in the scene and hitting Control D or Apple D on Macintosh. And that duplicates it, and you can position them around. Like, as long as these are childed to this game object, you can come down here to refresh spawn points, hit that, and it will update that in the spawn points list. You'll know if they're connected to the spawn point because it'll draw this line between them. If that's not there, that means that they're not connected. Something I didn't explain before is you can add seconds per wave. So each time this lapses, you can also add time to the next wave. So if you were to add 1 second per wave, that means the next wave will be 4 seconds away. And then the wave after that will be 5 seconds away. You can also do negative as well, so that the waves become faster each time. However, this does cap out at 0.5 seconds. So that's as small as you can go. Because beyond that is not it's just not a good idea, really. So yes, that's your limit. We'll leave that at 0 for now. So if random spawn point is not ticked, it will spawn to all spawn points after 3 seconds. And this one is now free. Okay, let me explain what just happened there. So because this one spawned and the cube dropped out of it, that therefore meant that the cube was now no longer within that spawn point's zone. So that spawn point was considered to be available. So after another 3 seconds, the next wave happened, and all of these were not available because the cube was still inside them, but this one was. So the spawner said to this one, alright, you're available and it's time to do another wave. I'm going to tell you to spawn a cube. If we do random spawn point, it means that every 3 seconds, one of these will be chosen at random to spawn the object. I'll set this to 1 for now, so that we can see what happens here. So now every second it'll choose at random one spawn point. However, it can choose spawn points that are not available, in which case it will then wait until the next spawn wave to try again. So sometimes spawn points will be chosen at random twice in a row and they'll still be unavailable. On the spawn points themselves, you have the spawn request cooldown. So I think I covered this before, but just in case I didn't, I'll just go over it one more time. That is how many seconds after an item has left the spawn point's position. So once that happens, how many seconds until that spawn point says, hey, I'm available now. So it defaults to 1, but you can set this to 10 seconds if you wanted to make it quite a long time until it becomes available to spawn to. So if you want to spawn random objects, you need to use this list. We'll increase this list to 3. And let's make a few different things. Let's make a sphere. We'll chuck a rigid body on that. Let's make a cylinder. Size that down a little bit. We'll chuck a rigid body on that. Come back to here. We'll have 1 cube, 1 sphere, and 1 cylinder. Now, if you want to change chance, let's say out of 5, it can spawn 1 cube, 1 sphere, but it can spawn 3 cylinders. That now means that that cylinder has a higher percentage of spawning than the sphere or the cube. But we'll set this back to 3 for now. So this is all done automatically. You don't need to tick a box that says, hey, random object, please. If there's more than 1 object, it'll do that random selection by itself. So it's active, random spawn point, auto respawn every second. It won't start spawned because that'll send it to all of them. And then you see it's picked randomly from that list of objects. But the sphere didn't get spawned in. Oh, wait, no, yes it did. You can also, if you want to, have them all start spawned. Untick random spawn point. And then hit play and you'll see that it'll send out a wave to all of them. So all the spawn points receive a random object right from the start. And then after that, as these move away, they'll spawn in a random object as that spawn point becomes available. So that's pretty much it for the quick spawner. As you can see, it can be quite useful for health pickups or ammo, weapons, etc. dotted around your scene. It can also be good for waves of NPCs and that kind of thing. And it's relatively simple to set up, as long as you keep in mind if it needs to be random or not random, and make sure you set your list of items here. And outside of that, that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoy this feature, and all the best with whatever it is that you make. Thanks for watching.